Welcome on France 24 to this new edition of the Talk of Paris. This is an exceptional program recorded in Tehran, where we are going to have an interview with one of the most controversial heads of state in the world, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who is President of the Republic of Iran. Good day, Mr. President.
Alaikum assalam.
You have given us this interview at a time when Iran is celebrating the new year and the start of the spring season, and on the eve of your departure for New York, where you would like to speak to the Security Council of the United Nations. Sanctions or negotiations, war or peace? Will the Americans intervene militarily in Iran? We're going to discuss these issues, but are you going to New York? When are you leaving? And what will you say to the Security Council of the United Nations?
In New York, I will have the opportunity to recall the historical background of the Iranian nuclear program, and I will also mention the historical background of the Security Council's position in this case, and the problems we're facing and the problems the whole humanity is facing right now. And I will put solutions on the table, and of course, I will also submit proposals so as to really tackle the Iranian nuclear issue. Who can speak out but Iran at the Security Council? There will be a tribunal where the prosecutor, the judge, the plaintiff, and the defense will be represented by the same person.
You have talked about new proposals to try and overcome the current crisis. What proposals would you like to make?
In the past, we proposed good ideas to the Europeans. We were extremely generous in this case. We proposed a consortium, the creation of a consortium. The Europeans were invited to associate themselves to our programs and the fuel-related issue in Iran, and they did not pay attention to that case, and they perhaps thought that with propaganda we were going to stall. But we did not stall. And we are not going to stall. There will be this proposal accompanied with other proposals. All those proposals will be based on law, on a legal framework. And number two, they will also base themselves on the legitimate respect of the Iranian population.
Are you going to submit this proposal again to create a consortium to manage Iran's nuclear program under the control of the IAEA?
In the past, we had this proposal, and I will remind them of this idea, of this proposal.
With George Bush, you're one of the main protagonists of the nuclear crisis, which has lasted for years now. What have you got to say to George Bush today? And how do you think Iran will avoid an increase in sanctions that could be voted in the days to come?
I would, first of all, rectify your judgment in the sense that you say that we created the crisis. We never created that crisis. We defended our legitimate rights. We are defending our legitimate rights. And France, at some historical point, defended its own nuclear program. Did France create a crisis? Did the French population create the crisis, or did the enemies of the French population create that crisis? Crises are triggered off by those who infringe on law and provide themselves the rights beyond that which is legitimate. Last year, I sent a message to President Bush. And I believe that I said everything in that message. I said everything I had to say, and everybody knows today that the source of quite a number of problems in the world is related to the behavior of American politicians in Iraq. Where is the problem? in Afghanistan, in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Sudan, in South America, in Africa, in Asia, everywhere. Problems stem from the behavior of American politicians. Insofar as the Iranian nuclear issue is concerned, same thing. They are the source of the problem. Now, of course, the British are following suit.
You have said that Iran will continue with its nuclear program. You won't go back on that. And you have said that this program is irreversible. It's like a train whose brakes have been released. So you won't stop this nuclear program? You won't accept to suspend the enrichment of uranium as requested by the Security Council? Even provisionally?
No. No, there are two things missing in the train. The brake and the reverse gear, because our work is totally legitimate. The question is as follows: why should we stop and join the enrichment process? In the United States, nuclear power plants are still producing fuel 24 hours a day. And we still haven't reached that stage. We're at the very beginning of our program. Which law forces us into adjourning this program? Which legal entity approves such demand, such request? The Americans drifted away from the peaceful process, and they manufactured atomic bombs and used atomic bombs. And Americans are now giving us lessons. Well, we're still in the very early stage of the fuel production process. And this will be marked by several stages. And every report of the agency says that Iran did not drift away from its peaceful means.
As you know, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty requires inspections and spot checks in particular. It calls for transparency in order to monitor your program. Why don't you accept spot checks? Why today is the IAEA saying that it hasn't got the means to guarantee that your nuclear program will be used for military purposes? Isn't there a need, a real need for more transparency?
First of all, for quite a long time, we deliberately implemented the protocol for over 2.5 years.
But no longer.
Let me go on. For 2.5 years, we implemented, without the authorization of the Assembly, this protocol. Whereas, according to the Iranian Constitution, we didn't have the right to do this without the early validation of the Assembly. But Iranian politicians implemented the protocol. But for 2.5 years, they interrupted activities in our nuclear power plants. We also observed international and European requests that took on a lot of importance, greater importance on a daily basis. We were told to stop university disciplines related to nuclear courses. And I'm just raising the issue. How about the British, the French, and the Americans? Do they implement this protocol? Did the Americans sign this protocol? This is a question we're raising. Now, a country that did not sign or implement a protocol, why should such a state ask another country to implement such a protocol? Our country cooperated with the agency. We totally respected the TNP provisions. We complied with those provisions, which give us access to the full fuel cycle. I'm talking about the nuclear fuel combustion cycle.